We have a healthcare system right now in the United States. We are the only developed country in the world that inserts banksters between you and your doctor, you and your hospital. Those banksters call themselves health insurance companies. 31% of U.S. health spending is consumed by administrative cost, and most of it has to do with them. You've got a hospital in Toronto and a hospital in New York, Beth Israel, about the same size. The one in New York has an entire floor of people who do nothing but deal with insurance companies. The one in Canada has one desk with one person at it who does that. That's because it's single payer in Canada. Half of all personal bankruptcies in the United States are caused by medical bills. That doesn't happen in the rest of the developed world. Three-quarters of those who are bankrupt had insurance at the time they got sick because, we put banksters in charge of this stuff. Despite spending far less on per capita on health care, Canadians are healthier, have better access, and it goes on and on and on. So what do we do about this? Do we join the rest of the world, or do we go back to where we were in 1900? Michael Cannon is on the line. He's the director of the health policy studies with the Cato Institute, cato.org, the libertarian think tank. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so you're welcome. So I don't get this. How can you defend a system, whether it's a relatively mandatory system like Obamacare or a voluntary system like before Obamacare, where the principal beneficiaries are banksters who generate no value? You've got Stephen Hemsley, the CEO of United Healthcare, has taken over $1 billion out of that company. His predecessor took $1.5 billion as CEO. And every single penny they took by saying, no, we will not pay for your liver transplant. No, we will not pay for your heart surgery, whatever. What? Make your case, sir.
Well, I think that health insurance companies can provide a lot of value, just like insurance companies do when they insure your car or your house, or when they provide life insurance. And to the extent that they are not providing value and are just imposing additional costs on people, the reason for that is because they're getting so many subsidies and so much protection from competition by government.
But that was not the case 20, 30 years ago.
That I don't defend. It's the case for 70 years in the United States. I don't defend the U.S. healthcare sector because it is so government-run, and was so government-run even before Obamacare, that I think it was fair to say that the government played as much of a role in healthcare in the United States as it. So
let me get this straight. You're trying to flip this upside down. I'm saying that there are things in the commons that government actually does a better job of administering than private for-profit corporations because their incentives are different. Social Security, Medicare runs on a 3% overhead. Medicare pays bills just fine, thank you very much, and they run on a 3% overhead. You've got giant health insurance companies. They were running 25, 30, 35, 40% overhead. Overhead is a fancy way of saying paying millions of. You got over 100 people at United Healthcare making over $1 million a year. You got nobody in Medicare making $1 million a year. So you're saying that the reason why these fat cats, these health insurance companies, are behaving in a way that's so essentially evil and destructive to health in the United States is because government facilitates it?
First of all, and that's right. But first of all, I think there's a problem.
I think that's a complete inversion of logic.
Well, I'm trying to turn this right side up again because the inversion is in a lot of your premises there, Tom. First of all, Medicare does not operate on 3% overhead. That's nonsense. Just collecting the taxes that are necessary to run Medicare costs 30 cents or more on the dollar. So that's a 30-cent administrative cost right there.
That's nonsense.
And any economist will tell you that is
absolute nonsense.
There's nothing partisan about that. It's called the deadweight loss of taxation, and every economist, left, right, and center, agrees.
Michael, that is one of those crazy economic theories that every now and then you get out of the Chicago school where they say, oh, gee, if you're taking money out in taxes or the government is administering it, it means some billionaire isn't making a fortune on it and stashing their money in the Cayman Islands, and we all know how many jobs that creates.
What it means is that someone's not getting a job. You're not creating economic activity. And then that 30% stated cost of Medicare, the stated administrative cost, insurance companies could get their administrative costs down to 3% if they wanted to, All they'd have to do is ignore fraud and ignore abuse and ignore waste. Health insurance would become much more expensive like Medicare is, and we would have many more people.
Medicare is much less expensive.
No, Medicare is much more expensive because you have massive fraud in Medicare. There are people making.
Well, I get it. Rick Scott, who was the governor of Florida, his company was convicted of the largest Medicare fraud in American history. And the guy is a good Republican, and the Republicans all love him. And I get that. You guys,
you know why that is? And you know why that is? It's because Medicare doesn't care about fraud.
No, that's why he got convicted. Medicare does care about fraud and fines them.
No, Medicare's approach to fraud is this. It's called pay and chase. Once the money goes out the door, then they might look into whether there's any fraud or not. And the amount of money that they collect from people like Rick Scott and everyone else is a fraction, a drop in the bucket of all the fraud that Medicare tolerates.
So you're saying that there's no fraud in the health insurance company, that Stephen Hemsley taking over $1 billion, there's nothing fraudulent about that. It's perfectly legal, right?
What I'm saying is that fraud in credit card companies is below 5%. But fraud in Medicare is 10 to 15% according to conservative estimates. So this whole fantasy that Medicare is efficient because the people who administer it pay
just because some conservative came up with a magic number of 10 to 15% doesn't make it real.
It's not conservatives. It's the government.
You said it was a conservative estimate.
No, that means modest, not politically conservative.
Okay.
And it was from the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office. So this idea that Medicare is efficient is a total fantasy that has been.
Okay, so let me just get this straight, Michael. Your argument is that Medicare has a 15% added load because of fraud and waste and abuse. And the for-profit insurance companies that are skimming 20% off the top, they don't have that much fraud and abuse, at least that you have noticed, and therefore we should pay them more. I'm confused.
The administrative cost of private health insurance can be as low as 5% for large.
How can they pay dividends to their stockholders? How can they pay billion-dollar incomes to their CEOs?
Because part of that money goes to the.
No, it's because they're banksters. They're skimming off the top. They're stealing our money, Michael. We're paying twice as much as any other country on earth for worse care. We have rationed health care in the United States.
Let me finish a sentence, Tom. The same thing that you're complaining of spending too much on health care in the United States compared to other countries is true for the over 65 population as well as the under 65 population. We have a single payer program in the United States called Medicare, and the government pays more for seniors than governments in other countries pay for their seniors. And if single payer,
we pay more for everything in this country because we've got our hospitals. You have for-profit hospitals ripping us off, Michael.
Tom, let me make my point here. If Medicare is so wonderfully efficient, then why is it overpaying just like the rest of the U.S. healthcare sector? You could say it's private hospitals, but you know what? In Canada, the hospitals are private too.
But they're not for profit.
Even with the not-for-profit hospitals,
when I grew up in Michigan, you had both hospitals and health insurance companies had to be not-for-profit, and I remember back in the 70s running a business where we were paying $35 per month per person for full Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, it was cheap. And then for-profit came along, and all three hospitals in Lansing got turned into for-profit hospitals, and suddenly everything exploded.
But there's a study that was released last week that show that the hospitals with the highest net revenues, i.e. profits, are nonprofit hospitals. Whether they're profit or nonprofit has nothing to do with it. The problem here is through Medicare, it
has everything to do with it. It's a difference in incentives.
They're all for revenue. There's nothing that says they can't. Okay. Nonprofits have to have negative revenue.
Michael, we're running out of time here. You get the last word. Hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
This is Michael Cannon, the Director of Health Policy Studies at Cato. You can read all about it at cato.com. You can tweet him at MFKennan. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.